How's the sound? Okay, we're gonna start in just a second. Just getting things lined up here. Okay. So today I'm going to be working on some tutorials. I just have to adjust the light a little, obviously. So someone asked me how to install the end stops the other day, and I haven't had a chance to actually record the tutorial, so I figured I'd let you join in and watch the process. Then you can ask questions, and we'll go from there. But essentially, I'm just going to show how these work. Hopefully, I still remember how to do it. One's a regular switch end stop. It has a voltage and ground lead, and the other one is an actual large connection, which I'll show you in 2 seconds, that connects right here. And essentially the wiring for it is green, black, and red, which means sensor or signal. Then this is ground, voltage. So we got to figure out where they're going to go on here. So I'll show that in a second when I start the tutorial. Hopefully I don't mess it up too much. I've been out of practice for a couple weeks. So I'm going to check on the chat before I start. Okay, it's kind of quiet, so I'm just going to start doing the tutorial, and we'll answer questions after. So here we go. Today we're going to talk about how to install switch end stops on the Big Tree Tech SKR, or pardon me, OctoPrint. Now I got to stop and restart. Let's try that again. Today we're going to talk about how to install switch end stops on the Big Tree Tech Octopus version 1.1. Now there's a couple of things you need to know about this on the board. There's actually switch end stop connections right here. They usually correspond now to the actual stepper drivers. So it's probably X minimum, Y minimum, Z minimum, then it's going to be E0, E1, E2, E3, E4. But these can be used for other functionality, such as filament detection. So to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to look up what it looks like in the actual manual. So I'll see what it looks like in 2 seconds over here. So as you can see, the actual end stops are right here. We're going to have to zoom in to see this a little bit better. So let me bring this up to a place where you can see it. So they call them diag pins in this case. So we're going to have to confirm another way where they are. So I would normally go to the manual that I have over here. but it doesn't give a lot of detail on the actual end stops. So we're going to find out what it looks like actually in VS Code. So I'm going to open up VS Code, and inside VS Code I'm going to click on the Explorer, then Open Folder. Then I'm going to go to my Downloads folder, my Marlin folder, my next Marlin folder, then Select Folder. Inside here, in order to figure out what's going on with it, we're going to start with going to the Marlin folder, then the source folder, then the core folder, then boards.h. And we're going to search on Octopus. And as you can see, there's two versions. This is the version we're working with, which is 1.1. So I'm going to copy that. And I'm also going to note what the actual chipset is. In this case, it says STM32F4, and that's what we're going to need to locate the actual pins file. So we'll do that right now. So I'll minimize the core, go to pins, and then I'm going to look for STM32F4 and open that up. And then as you can see, there's a lot of different things in here. So we have to locate our board, which is the 1.1. And now it says that there's an actual pins common, which means that probably this is sharing it with this, which means it's this file right here. So to find the actual end stop, what we're probably going to have to do is look right here, and it says PG6 is a diag pin. This is probably our end stop, but let's make sure because they have them actually down here defined as well. So we'll go back over to the actual manual and we'll look for PG6. So that is the actual step pin for the signal. So it's going to be voltage, ground, and then signal. So in this case, voltage is 3.3 volts. So we can go back over to the board now and set this up. So we know on here that this is going to be voltage for green, then it's going to be black as ground, then it's going to be, this is going to be signal, ground, and then voltage. So on the actual diagram that we looked at, it's going to be voltage, ground, and then signal at the bottom. So for the X stepper, I'm going to take this and I'm going to rotate it over because we know that the signal is on the bottom, and I'm going to connect it right here. So that's all we have to do for this end stop. For the other one, we've got a puzzle. So we only have technically voltage and ground, but the actual voltage in this case is actually signal. So we're going to do this for the Y, and what I'm going to do is actually go to the ground and signal only on this one. So now that we have those set up, we need to configure it in VS Code. So we'll go back over to VS Code, and inside VS Code, if it comes up here, let me change it this way. So apparently I'm having a problem capturing it. Give me a second here. Awesome. So I'll capture it another way. There we go. So inside VS Code, what we're going to have to do is actually minimize this file for pins. Then we're going to go over to configuration.h, and we're going to search on motherboard because we copied this earlier, and we're going to paste it over the ramps configuration. Then we're going to scroll up here and we're going to say serial port is actually -1. After we've set that, we need to actually look at the end stops. So I'm going to search on end stops, and hopefully it'll bring us to end stop settings. Now there's a couple of things in here that are interesting. Obviously you can see that they're defined for 3 end stops right now, for X-min, Y-min, and Z-min. And then we have settings over here for float point. This has to do with capacitors and resistors smoothing out the signal. We're technically not going to use that right now. We're going to ignore it because it's not that big a deal most of the time. But we also have inverting down here, which means that if it's triggered when it shouldn't be, we need to reverse the logic. And one of the issues is that one of the end stops we're working with on the x-axis will actually be inverted. So we're going to change the false to a true in this case and leave the other one alone so you can see the difference. So now that we've got that configured, what we're going to need to do is actually go up here back to the I&I folder, and remember how I said remember which type of board we're working with, in this case the STM32F. We're going to click on that I&I for that chipset, because we need to know what we're going to use for our default environment. So I'm going to search on Octopus, and this will bring us to the first entry right here, and we'll copy this. Then what we'll do is we'll go over to platformio.ini, and where it says default environment Mega 2560, we'll paste it over that. Now the other thing that we need to do is actually in the .pio, we have remnants of what they built before they uploaded, and that would be the Mega 2560. They probably built it to confirm that it actually builds for that configuration. So we're going to clean it out with the little garbage can down here. And then we're going to click the checkbox for build. This is going to be multiple compiles. So what's occurring is a bunch of builds are occurring as compiles. That's why they call it build. If you do have an error, sometimes it will build out of order. Try building a second time. If it does fail after the second time, find the very first error that's red down here and correct the error. There may be other errors that occur after that, but they might be a cascade of errors related to the first error. So this is now built. So we can go over here to the Big Tree Tech Octopus folder, and we can see that there's a firmware.bin. So I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to reveal it in File Explorer. So I'll bring this over so you can see. So we now have that, but we do have to set up on our desktop the actual drive. So I'm going to show you that in 2 seconds here. So over here, we're going to have to pop out the drive for a moment. And then we're going to have to insert it into our drive reader. Then I'm going to place this into the computer, and you may hear a beep. Then I'll go back over to the desktop for a second, and I'll check to see if it's there, which it is. So it says right here, firmware.cur. So that was the build that was originally firmware.bin that got renamed so it wouldn't keep loading as the current build. So I'm going to right click, and I'm going to send this to the USB drive. So once this actually loads, it'll be renamed to this name right here. So let's go back over to the workbench. Now on the workbench, I'm going to pop out the drive. I'm going to pop out the actual SD card, and I'm going to insert it into here. Now to power it, I have the clip or cap on the actual power for USB power. So I'm just going to plug it in and see if it powers up, which it is, and it's loading. So now we need to test this with platform IO already loaded and everything all set. We're going to have to take a look inside of Pronterface. So inside Pronterface, I want to connect to this, but there's an issue that I don't know what the COM port is. It might be COM port 13. So we're going to have to check that real quick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in Device Manager. And when that comes up, I'll bring it over to the screen so you can see. And we're going to click on the ports, and you can see that it's COM port 9. So I'm going to close this. I'm then going to go back over to Pronterface like I had it before. And I'm going to change the 1 over here to a 9. and then I'm going to say connect. So now it says connecting, printer is now online. So to check the end stops, there's actually a G code you can use, which is from Marlin. This is a code to get feedback from the actual board. So I'm going to type M119 and press enter. And what you see right here is that we have two things that are open, and then the third one, which is the Z-axis, which is not connected, says triggered. So we know that this is probably going to be our first end stop, so we can test it by going over to the actual switch and clicking it with our finger, and then on the actual printer face software hitting enter again for M119. And what we see is that it is now triggered. So we can untrigger it with our finger and then do M119 again to see if it goes back, and it does. So let's try the other one. So I'm going to click on the end stop, and then I'm going to click on M119, and now it says triggered. So let's undo it and do the same. So that looks like it works quite fine. So if you like my tutorial, please press the like button and subscribe. And thank you for your time. Okay. Well, it's awful quiet in here watching me do tutorials today, I guess. But I was thinking of doing some other stuff on the board today. Obviously, a lot of people are asking how to hook up things like Raspberry Pi. And I'm not exactly sure how to do it not the normal way. So let me get this so you can see what I'm doing better. So today I thought I'd do the Raspberry Pi install because I haven't done it for this actual board yet. But I've done the clipper install, so I just want to show you this real simple thing. It's actually not hard or overwhelming, and there are other flavors of it. I guess Mainsail's another flavor, but essentially I think they're all Linux with different interfaces. So essentially what I have here is a Raspberry Pi. So we're actually going to hook it up slightly different. Hopefully I can do it correctly. But there's communication pins up here. But I actually don't want to do it this first run through because first I want to see if it works with this board where it connects. Then I'll do it the other way. So essentially what I'm going to have to do is load the firmware. And parts of this I'm obviously not going to show you, only because I don't want you to see what my network is doing. So that part I'll do off screen. So I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to have to image the drive again. So I'm going to grab this, and I'll do this actually in a tutorial format so you can see. So let me see if I can line these up in a way that actually makes sense. Probably like this, and I got to find the power. And I'll check on questions before I begin, but right now my wires are all crossed here. So I just want to make sure I've got everything. Okay. Let's see if I can adjust the lighting a little. Okay. And let me check on the chat real quick. Okay, so if you have questions, don't forget to put them in the chat. I'm going to start this tutorial in 2 seconds. It's just how to do a Raspberry Pi on this board. So I just have to set some stuff up in the back end where you can't see it. So I'm essentially setting up the output to the recording. And apparently it doesn't like me doing that, so I'm going to have to keep it in the same folder because I'm streaming at the same time. So we'll do this now. So today we're going to talk about how to hook up the OctoPrint with an OctoPi to the Big Tree Tech Octopus version 1.1. So there are a couple things you need to know. This is actually a way to use a smaller computer to actually offset the actual processing of the actual print with your G codes being sent to your board. So essentially what we're going to do is use a mini computer instead of your regular computer to send the job and not use a display. So to do this, we actually have to load OctoPi. So OctoPi is actually a program that someone developed with a Linux backend that has a Pronterface front end or emulation of it. And it allows you to actually print from this computer that doesn't take a lot of processing power compared to your computer. So to do this, we're going to have to image a drive. So to do this, I'm going to grab the actual drive right here, and I'm going to insert the actual 8 gig card that I'm using with this, and then place this in the computer. So I've already downloaded and extracted the most recent version of OctoPi, which I'll show you in just a second. I just had to bring it up. So let me show you this real quick. So over here we have OctoPi. It explains a little bit about it. Then down here there's actually a download that you can download the most current build. I've already done that and extracted it. So what I'm going to use is actually the Raspberry Pi imager over here to actually image it. So I'm going to click on the operating system. I'm going to click on custom. Then I'm going to click on the image, then open. Then I'm going to choose the actual drive that I'm using, which is the SD card that I placed in the computer. And then I'm going to click write. And it's going to ask me if I want to erase everything. I'm okay with it, so I'm going to say yes. And then it'll begin to image the drive. This may take a few moments. So while that's going on, let's see if I can check on the chat. Okay, I guess I'll go back to it for a second and pour myself a glass of juice. So this may take upwards of 10 minutes to image. It's moving kind of quick on this computer, but on other computers it might be slower. And this part of the video I'm probably going to speed up just because it takes forever. But essentially I'm recording the video all the way through so you can see what's going on for the production of a video. Parts of it can be extremely time consuming to watch. And for those that don't know, there's also a Discord channel that I maintain. I'll let you see what it looks like as soon as I can get it over to the other screen. So this is the Discord channel. Essentially everyone talks inside the general chat, and then there's other chat rooms where you can ask questions. A lot of people here are really experienced in how to actually operate or set up their printer. So I'm not always the best reference, but there are other people here that do have the knowledge as well. So I'm going to move this out of the way for the moment. And it looks like we're almost there. While that's going on, I think I'll peek into the chat because it looks like there's a little bit more to go. Okay. Okay, so now it's just verifying that it's actually correct. This may take a couple of minutes as well. As soon as this completes, you have to remove the drive for a moment and then place it back in the computer so that you can edit files. Now, when you edit the files, you're going to have to use something like Notepad++ because Notepad may cause issues in the file because it's a Linux type file. So we're almost there. Guess my upstairs neighbor is moving in today, so if you hear a strange thud, you might know where it's coming from. But I have filters on, so hopefully you won't hear it. Okay, this is going to be done in about 15 seconds is my guess. So it's probably going to throw up a message. Okay, once it's completed, you're going to hit continue. Then I'm going to minimize this for a second. I'm actually going to go over to my folder here, and you can't see the drive, so you're going to have to remove it for a second, then plug it back in. Then you'll see your drive right here, and you're going to find the supplicant file. So inside here, you're going to have to set up your network password. So in this case, I'm going to have to click here. This file will open in Notepad++, not in Notepad. And then you're going to find your actual settings over here. So what you're going to say is you're going to use the WPA network is probably the most common. So I'm going to close this and do it off screen. And then I'll let you see that part, but I'll look at the chat while that's going on. So it's still quiet in chat. So I'm going to open this up. I'm going to move it out of your view for a second so I can do this. Let me make sure you can't see what I'm doing. Okay. So essentially I'm taking out the comments and I'm placing my network settings in here. But obviously I don't want you to see my passwords or anything like that. So I'm doing it off screen. That, and I don't know what the name of my actual network is right now, so this might take me a little bit longer than I thought. Okay, so I'm going to save that. Once that's saved, which you can probably see now, I'm going to then remove this from the computer and place it in the Raspberry Pi. So I'm going to go back over to the workbench. I'm going to take out the Raspberry Pi, and hopefully I did my password correctly or else we won't be able to see this. So I'm going to place the drive in here, and then I'm going to place this on the table so it doesn't move around. So essentially I'm going to power this up in a second, and hopefully it will see the network. Otherwise I got to fix my supplicant file. So I'm going to grab the power cord, going to connect it over here to the power on the Raspberry Pi 4. Then I'm going to turn it on. And that's going to take a second to boot. So one of the tricks that I like to do is actually use the actual command line, in this case in DOS, to find it. So I'm going to go over and I'm going to bring that up in a second and show you a little trick inside of DOS that no one knows anymore. So inside here, to find out what's on your network, you can type ARP -A, and that should show you everything that's on the network. So you can see there's a bunch of things that come up. Now obviously one of these is my computer, another one's probably my TV set, and then the other ones are the router or something else. But currently we're going to have to wait a second to find the actual Raspberry Pi if it works. Otherwise I've screwed up the supplicant file, in which case I got to fix it. So we'll give that a second more and I'll check on the chat while that's going on. Okay, so let me check one more time here. It's probably going to take a second more, but we'll see. Okay, it is not showing anything new yet, so I may have screwed up the supplicant file. So I might have to check that. We'll give it a minute more. Let me see if I can clear this. I can't remember the commands. What is it? Home? Or maybe it's up here. Oh well. I forgot what the command was. I think it's clear or flush, but it's been forever, so let's do help and see if we can find it. CLS. There we go. Now let's do that command by up arrowing 3 or 4 times, and it's not showing up. Awesome. So I may have screwed up the actual address, so I'm going to bring it back to the workbench and check it myself. I have to do this off screen because I don't want to share too much information about my setup. Basically, I'm logging into my router to see what the actual configuration on the network is, and so it looks like I got the name wrong. So I have multiple routers and I put the wrong one in. So give me a second to fix that. So I'm just going to move this off screen. I'm going to turn this off for a second. Just going to pop out this drive right here. And I'm going to pop it back into here. And then back into the computer. So I'm essentially just opening up this file and making a quick edit in the file. So I want to make sure I know which screen I'm on here so you can't see this. But essentially I'm going to the drive, going to the supplicant file. I'm editing the supplicant file with Notepad++. And I'm changing my SSID to the correct name for the router that I'm using. And then I'm saving this and popping it back in. So let me close that down. I'm going to take the drive back out. I'm going to pop it back out, place it back inside here, and then power it back up. Obviously, when I do videos, it looks like I do it right the first time. That's not always the case, or most of the time is not the case. In this case, it's obviously that way. So we can go back in a second and check this. Let me just close down some screens here. So over here on the desktop, it's not going to show up right away, but we're looking, or we're interested in the dynamic ones. This one obviously is my router. This one is the computer I'm on, or possibly my cell phone, I don't know. So let's try this again. There it is. So it's 1.3. So we're going to go over to the router, or excuse me, the web page, and we're going to pull that up. So on here, I'm going to type in 192.168.1.3, and this will bring up the Raspberry Pi configuration, hopefully. Might take a second to load if it's working. Otherwise, my phone connected to the network and I just didn't know it. Let's see. One 192.168. That should be it. Awesome. Hopefully I didn't knock myself off the network. Let's see if I can try a different browser. So let me bring it back to the workbench for a second while I do that. Huh. For some reason I can't reach something on my own network. That's awesome. Okay, it might mean that I have to go back into the supplicant file in a second, because I may have loaded the wrong thing. But let's check to see if it's on the network. It says it's on the network. So I do not know why it's not being friendly to me. So I'm going to copy the address. Try this again on the browser real quick. Interesting. Let me check to see if something else is working in the browser. Oh, the number is actually different. I'm sorry. That explains the issue. So apparently I got my addresses goofed up. It's 192.168.1.2. So let's try this again. 192.168.1.2. And hopefully it'll connect. There we go. So inside here it says, thank you for installing OctoPrint, pardon me. The wizard will guide you through the final steps, so click next. We're not doing a backup, so we'll go next. Username, we'll say Pi and then Raspberry. Hopefully I spell it right. And then Raspberry again. And then we'll create an account. We'll close out of there. We won't save it. Go next. Let's see. I don't want to be tracked, so I'll disable that. So next. Configure online connectivity. We'll say enable for now. Then we'll go next. We'll enable blacklist processing for now. Then we'll go next. Default name, we'll call it Octopus 1_1. Of course, I've got to get the 1 right. And then we'll go next. We'll finish, and this will bring up the actual connectivity. Now, if we go back over to the workbench, we can actually connect this directly from here. Now, sometimes these work funky, so this might be interesting. So that's connected. So let's go back and see what happens in the actual browser. So we're going to connect automatically, and it says that it's operational. So we can actually watch in the terminal over here. We could do something like M119 and press enter. And you can see what the state of the actual end steps are. Obviously, one or both are disconnected right now. They're both actually disconnected. So you get a really funky output. So we can see what's going on there. We can actually do filtering. So like we can suppress temperature. I think we can do response waiting if we wanted, but I like to leave these all unchecked so I can see what's going on. But I'm trying to see how much of this I can actually clear out. So let's try clear all. It's probably going to still give us messages. So this is actually temperature messages, which it's supposed to suppress. Apparently it's not working. So we'll leave that alone for now. And we'll just learn how to do an update real quick. So over here, there's a little wrench. You can do an update for your Pi over in here. So there's a software update. I like to do update all. This might take a second. Then there's a second update I'll show you in a second that you can do in the Linux operating system. It's apt-get update all or something. But I'm a little rusty, so I might have to look it up. And I'll check on the chat while this is going on. Yeah, the USB on the Raspberry Pi is nice. Sometimes the SD card gets a little fun, but that's only because I usually have one that's not working. So I'm going to click reload now over here. And what I'm going to do in a second is actually log into this a different way. So I'm actually going to do something in TerraTerm. So let me bring that up so you can see what I'm doing. So there's a program I use called TerraTerm that allows you to communicate with the actual hardware. In this case, the numbers changed on me. That's why I was confused. So I'm going to say connect. And then I'm going to say the username is Pi and then Raspberry. Hopefully I typed it right. Okay, it says I'm connected, so I'll make this a little larger. So there's something called apt-get, I believe. I have to actually look this up, but it's been a while for me. So my Unix is a little rusty. So we'll say Linux apt-get update. So there's a command to do an update on the operating system. So essentially we've got to find it. I believe it's apt-get update. But on occasion I mess this command up, so let's see if we can find it. So there it is. There's upgrade and update. This is the one we want, is update. So we're going to copy that. We'll go back over to here, right click, press enter. It's going to ask for a password. So it's raspberry. Then press enter. And this will update the actual operating system we're working on. So this may take a few moments. This is good to do when you install new software. In this case, it looks like it's currently up to date. I don't see anything wrong. So let's try upgrade if you want to see what that looks like. Say yes. And now it's failing, but that's okay. It's trying to find, I think, a place to do it. And it may have found a place to, it's looking at mirror sites, but so it is doing a bunch of upgrades. It took a second to do that. Apparently my Linux knowledge is getting rusty. And this is probably going to take a few minutes. And then we can test it again. Hopefully nothing will fail. But some people want me to do mainsail. I don't know what you guys think of that, or if you want to see it. Apparently this upgrade's taking far longer than I thought, and my network traffic is very slow. Still waiting on green light for my service provider, so obviously the streaming's a little bit slow when I have to do multiple things. So essentially the reason this is moving so slow when I do it offline, it's quicker, is because I'm streaming to you at the same time I'm trying to download stuff. So the download should be quicker, but I'm using the upload bandwidth too. Okay, this is almost there. Hopefully this is the last thing that it has to do. And hopefully this actually works after I'm done. Oh, there's some more to do. This actually might be about 10 minutes. Okay. So part of it worked, I guess. So let's try rebooting the actual Raspberry Pi. I'm not going to show you how to do it in Linux because it's been a while. So we'll go back over to 192.168.1.2. see if it actually comes up. Does look like it came up. Let's try a restart. Or reboot. Okay. It's offline. It's going to take a second. Now, if you're interested in doing Clipper, essentially parts of the process I already showed you. This is where it gets to the point where you can actually do Clipper. This is also why it took forever to make a video on it, because there are a lot of steps. And yet I can't reconnect. So does anybody have any questions on stuff? Yeah, obviously I'm doing it out of order. But let's see if it connects. Apparently it's now not working. So maybe updating is not the smartest thing to do. That's awesome. Let's see what's going on here. Okay, let's see if I can actually get a readout here. M119. So I'm actually connected, so I'm not worried about this message at the moment. But let's try doing some plugins. So there's a plugin that is for Clipper. I gotta find it here real quick. Clippin', here's the plugin manager. It's Get More, and then I believe it's Clipper. So let's see if this actually works. That's not it. Let's try it here. Interesting. Let's try third party. Oh, sorry. I'll wake up in a minute. So this will give you functionality to work with Clipper if you are. So if you close this and this, it'll ask you to restart. And eventually you'll have a Clipper tab over here as soon as this reboots. So if we go to the browser, you now have Clipper. Then you have to do the actual configuration for the firmware for Clipper in this case. We're not going to be able to connect via Clipper right now because we have a different firmware. But we can always uninstall this. So if we go over here, let's see if we can take it out. Plugin manager. It's going to take me a second to find it. Apparently it's not going to be easy to remove. So I guess we'll skip that. Let's see if there's a way to do this. Just trying to figure out if there's an easy way to uninstall it without having to jump into a different place. Well, that's not going to be fun. So the easy way for me is to actually re-image or go into Linux and start wiping things out. But let's see if we can do this instead. Create a backup now. That was awfully quick. So I guess the backups are kind of small because there's not a lot of information. Let's see if we can see it. Of course, it's not over here, so we're not going to see it. But we could probably browse to it. Let's see if we can do this. Apparently, I don't know how to grab it off the system without using File Browser or FileZilla. So I guess we'll look at some plugins that I have no clue what they do. And apparently plugins are not being friendly at the moment. There we go. So I guess there's a plugin for announcements. Let's try that out. It's also an old version of Python. So that looks like the inventor and all her stuff. So let's look for a third party. That we already have. Oh, there's the uninstall. Details. So now Clipper's off the system, hopefully. So we'll give it a second, see if it's gone. Yeah, and Clipper's gone. So I think there's a way to install Step D the same way. So let's try that. Step D is for 8-bit boards. Some people have been asking about it. So essentially, Step D for OctoPrint, maybe. And it's on Discord, I believe, or not Discord, on GitHub. So someone created a stepping daemon that's similar to Clipper. This only works on 8-bit systems at the moment. It took me some time to figure that out. So I can't show you on a 32-bit system, but I can show you on an 8-bit system. So let's see if we can find the install process down here. Let's see, must install system package manually. So let's see what we got here. Simple, reliable, efficient. Okay, this might not be the simplest thing to show you right now, so let's go back to Step D. and see if we can install something. So I know there's directions down here. So I'm going to copy this and I'll show you in OctoPrint how to do this, hopefully. You go to Plugin Manager, Get More. You're going to do it from a URL, so you'll paste it right here. And this, in theory, will install it. Don't know how well it works on the actual 8-bit processors yet, but this gives you the functionality. So you just close it, restart, proceed, close, and I think it'll give you a Step D tab as a plugin, but let's see. You also have to configure some stuff inside of Marlin to do this. So this may fail like it is right now. But inside of Marlin, there's some functionality you have to set for how you step. And eventually it crunches the numbers on the actual Raspberry Pi and pushes it over versus on the Raspberry Pi. So it's taking the functionality like Clipper off the MCU and pushing it to the CPU for Raspberry Pi. And the camera just went off. Hang on a second. So at least I've shown you something somehow, but obviously I haven't streamed in a while because the heat here gets extreme during the summer. And this is the first week in September where it hasn't been over 85 degrees with 85 degrees Fahrenheit with humidity around 75–80%. We're probably down to about 50% humidity now. But if no one's got any questions, I might start doing these on Saturdays from now on and see how it goes. For those that are tipping in Discord or on YouTube, thanks. I can't see them while I'm in this stream mode, so I'm thanking you in advance. But I'm going to cut it short today and try and catch up on my sleep from a busy month. So everyone take care, be safe, get vaccinated, wear a mask, and hopefully this will all be over with Corona in a couple weeks. Take care.